Get started. Okay, today's speaker is Naeemul Hassan, Professor Naeemul Hassan, who is in the Philip Merrill College of Journalism and the iSchool. So he has interest in databases, data mining, and natural language processing. His current research focus is on computational journalism and social sensing. And before he joined College Park, he was an assistant professor at the Computer and Information Science Department at the University of Mississippi. He earned his PhD in computer science from the University of Texas at Arlington. So if any of these seem interesting to you and his research talk seems interesting to you, you can probably chat with him after the talk. And also, like, if you have any questions while Professor Hassan is presenting, feel free to ask them during the talk. Okay.
Thank you so much, Teja, for the awesome introduction. And thank you all for coming and listening to the boring talk. You will decide. And it's my pleasure to be here and presenting in front of you. So, a brief introduction. I came in 2010 in the United States and joined the PhD program in Arlington. And then I graduated in 2016. I was a faculty in the computer science department at Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, and joined here. I have a joined from in the journalism college and in the iSchool from this fall. Okay, so I mostly work in the natural language processing, database, and data mining area, and I try to find applications of these awesome techniques on computational journalism and social media sensing. So today I'll try to focus on the computational journalism part. My goal is to go over 2 of my projects, and if time permits, I'll go over 1 more. And I enjoy building prototypes. I have built Buster. It has been used by newsworthy.com. The goal of the tool is to automatically find the clickbait from your newsfeed. I have built Buster. Any of you heard of Buster? Yay! Okay, so this is a tool to automate the fact-checking process. I'll be happy to discuss more about it. On the night before I found a project fund. And I also built a fact watcher that had the excellent demo award in the Objectivity 2014. And the goal there is to automatically find significant facts from stream on the database. Okay, and feel free to interrupt me at any point, so I can have questions in the middle, at the end, so don't worry about it. Okay. So what I understand about computational journalism is it's a two-way process. We solve problems where computation needs journalism, and we also solve problems where journalism needs computation. So what do I mean by that? Consider fact-checking. That's an activity by the journalist, right? So computation in journalism can handle how do I make that efficient? How do I automate some part of it, or at least the whole part of it, or hopefully the whole part of it. And journalism and computing could be, in computer science we design algorithms, we come up with solutions, we come up with new technologies. But the scientists, the computer scientists, they probably are not so much savvy about what are the ethical consequences of the algorithm that I designed. What are the biasness that has been going on in the algorithm. So the journalists, they have a good idea about what is ethical, they have a certain set of values. They can make the scientists or the algorithm designs more accountable. So that's the 2 part that I see in the computational journalism. Okay. So my first talk, the first project is about the automated fact-checking. So here, we have one example of a fact by presidential candidate in 2012. Our Navy is smaller than it's been since 1917. So it will take a candidate Mitt Romney in the third presidential debate in 2012. Okay. What do you think about this claim? Our Navy is smaller than it's been since 1917. Does it sound right? Wrong? Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I would expect, like, during World War II, the production miracle, it's called, to be where the Navy was the biggest.
So might be possible. Maybe we have more ships at the time during the war wars. Okay. However, if we look at the graph, yeah, in 2009 we had about 283 ships, maybe, and in 1916 we had about 245, which increased, and that also increased in 1945. So in terms of number, probably we are not ahead than the number of sheets that we had before. However, if you really consider the things that we are comparing, it becomes more apparent that the claim might not be as true as it seems. For example, in 1917, probably we had sheets like this, and now we're comparing with sheets like that. So one of these might have more power than hundreds of that. So it's not an apple-and-apple comparison. So it indicates that fact-checking is not kind of a simple task. It's a hard problem. And the professional fact-checkers, they take a lot of time when they check something. Okay? They take a lot of effort before they give their veracity. Okay. So I was interested in the fact-checking process, how they do it. And I talked to Bill Adair, the founder of PolitiFact. How many of you heard of PolitiFact? Yay! Okay. So PolitiFact is one of the prominent fact-checking organizations in the United States. I think they have also owned the Pulitzer, one of the prizes, probably Pulitzer. So I talked with Bill, and he explained how they do the fact-checking. First, they have a set of college interns who monitor the different news sources, probably video sources, TV, different news media, and based on what they believe that this needs to be checked, this is questionable, people would be interested in knowing whether this is true or false, they populate a shared document. Okay, so you have a Google spreadsheet where the college interns are giving one claim at a time with the speaker information, the date, and other metadata. Then, after that part is done, there's a set of, let's say, editors. Okay. They come into the picture, and they try to understand, okay, among all these things, which one we need to fact check now? The timeliness. For which one do we have the resource? Okay. So based on different criteria, they decide, okay, we're going to check these 3 or these 2 in today or in this week. So that's kind of the way they are kind of working. And after they are done with the fact-checking process, it goes another round of checking. Okay. Now, after understanding this process, I was wondering, how can I contribute to this whole process? Is there any part where probably we can make some, apply some automation? So it looks like the task that the college interns are doing, maybe we can help them. Okay. So what they're doing is they're going over a bunch of documents or a bunch of audio files, and from that they're picking out the ones which are checkworthy, which they believe people will be interested to fact check. So this can be modeled as a classification problem. So given a set of sentences, given a set of paragraphs, you figure out which one is checkworthy, which one is not. Probably it makes sense. But to that, for that we need the data set, we need the ground truth, like what is checkworthy, what is not. Okay. The problem in defining the checkworthiness of a sentence is, this is a subjective matter. Okay. What you think as checkworthy, probably I have a different scale. Probably I would say this is not a checkworthy statement. So how do I come up with a set of uniform rules to define this is checkworthy and this is not? It was hard. So what we did was, first we collected all the presidential debate transcripts since 1960 till 2012. And I think we had about 30,000 sentences from different debates. We filtered out the short sentences, and that gave us about 20,000 reasonable sized sentences. And we used human annotators, mostly journalism, computer science students, and faculties, and actual journalists, and the fact checkers. So all they contributed to help us decide these are the checkworthy statements which, and these are not so much checkworthy statements. And after that, we built a classification model that we named as Claim Buster. I'll talk about it in a couple slides. So we defined 3 categories for the sentences. The first one, CFS, checkworthy factual statements. These are the statements which the people would like to fact check. Okay. For instance, we spend less on the military today than at any time in our history. Another example, more people are unemployed today than 4 years ago. So these are the kinds of factual claims that people would like to see fact-checked. The second category is UFS, unimportant factual claim. So these are factual claims, but people won't bother about checking them. Some example, I was in Iowa yesterday. That is a factual claim, but people probably won't care whether I was in Iowa or in some other states. My mother enjoys cooking. That is also a factual claim, but probably someone won't make the politicians liable what your mother likes or not. And the third category is no factual claim. These are questions, these are opinions. For example, Iran must not get nuclear weapon. This is not a fact. This is something that I believe, like Iran shouldn't or must not have that. Why should we do that? Another question. Our plan is to reduce tax rate by 10%. That's our plan. I cannot check that. That's something I'm going to do in future. All right. So these are the three categories we defined: CFS, UFS, and NFS. And we took about 1 year to annotate that data. Some of our collaborators suggested about going to Amazon Mechanical Turk, Crowdflower, or I think the Figure 8. So those services to annotate the data. We ran some small scale tasks over there, but the quality wasn't satisfactory. So we decided to do it in-house. We trained the students, we trained the annotators, and they did it in our lab. So we had about 300 participants. We designed a website where they can work from their home and other places. And to monitor their performance, we had about 1,000 ground truth data, for which all the researchers agreed that these are the ground truth. This should be CFS, this should be NFS, this should be UFS, and so on. And if the coders agree on that, we say these are high quality coders. If they don't agree on that, then we question their quality of work. Okay. So after we have the ground truth data, we did some feature engineering. We took the personal speech of the words, we took the entities if they're present in the sentences, sentiment, the actual words, and so on, and use these as features. For example, if the sentence is, when President Bush came into the office, we had a budget surplus and the national debt was a little over 5 trillion. So President Bush is an entity of a person type, and the personal speech tag for the word budget is now, and from this sentence we have these keywords like office, we had, and so on, and the sentiment is a negative 0.3. Okay. By the way, I have a question for the audience. What do you think is the relation between sentiment and factuality of a sentence? Yes.
Well, I would think that the factual claims are less likely to have any sentiment at all, because sentiment is usually opinion.
Yeah, you're right. So if this is opinion, it will have maybe a stronger sentiment, positive or negative, right? Mm-hmm. But if a sentence doesn't have any sentiment, probably it's a fact. So that's something, and that's one of the reasons we use the sentiment as one of our features. All right. Now, if you are familiar with the concept of subjectivity or objectivity, so there are some questions about whether we are trying to solve the subjectivity problem. So we did some analysis, and we found probably no. A sentence can be subjective, and at the same time can have factual claims, and it can be objective and may not have factual claims. Yes?
How do you handle sarcasm?
We did not consider sarcasm. So if a sentence is a fact, and the intention of the speaker was sarcasm, we did not code that in our data. Yes?
I missed what you said in the last slide about interacting with your agreement. You said, did you just throw those out, or did you re-annotate the consensus, or what did you do with the ones that didn't?
We kept the sentence annotated until we have an agreement, or we have a majority vote. Mm-hmm. So at least 3 people contributed to each of these sentences. Okay. So if they have agreed on, 2 of them agreed, then we're good. Okay. If there is no agreement, then ask more coders for those sentences until we have a majority.
Oh, I see. So you just throw more coders at it, but they don't sit down and talk about it.
Yes, in the training sessions, when they get trained, they work on multiple cases, and if they have questions, they talk, we discuss, and we try to understand what would be the actual label for this.
Right, but in the training only, not in...
Yeah, not in the actual.
Okay.
Yes.
And what is your annotator? Oh, sorry.
And if you had restricted to sentences that have consensus from the coders, would that have reduced your database, or
Yes.
your data by a huge amount?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, we continued until we had majority voting on each of the sentences. So we had majority voting on all the sentences, but majority voting might not be the gold standard. So people may argue that there are some sentences which are highly controversial or not controversial, which are neither CFS or EFS. So there are some cases where, like 49, 51, those kinds of.
Right, and 2 out of 3 doesn't fill
Yeah.
you with confidence.
Do you have like a kappa score or?
We had a kappa score, and unfortunately I can't remember that. Right, so we wanted to look at the more important features, like among all these features, which one makes sense or which one is more responsible for the classification. We found that the presence of number is contributing to the factuality of a statement by a lot. That really makes sense. If it contains a number, it's a kind of a variable fact. The length of the sentence, presence of verbs in past tense, the sentiment, as I mentioned, all these are the top important features that we found from our feature set. And then we applied multiple classification algorithms, SVM, narrow Bayes, and random forest. SVM generally performed better than the others. So we had more data for NFS that contributed to the higher score in terms of precision, recall, and measure for NFS. And we had the lowest amount of data for the UFS, so that contributed to the low score there. But in general, our precision for finding the check-worthy factual claim is about 80%, and for recall, it's about 34%. So once we have the model, what we did was we almost were near the 2016 presidential election. We tried to have some fun. So what we did was, when the debate was happening, the presidential debates, we took the closed caption from the TV program through a text grabber device, passed it to our model, okay, when the debate is going on in the as a live program. So you can see the debate is going on, our machine gets the video caption, passes it to our model, apply the model, check the factual claims, and present it to our website. So, and also, if our model believes that this is a highly check-worthy factual claim, we also post that in our project's Twitter account. Okay. So this is our project website, where you can see we have the 2016 presidential election, the primary elections, and the actual election between the two different parties. And if we go over one of these debates, we can see what is the transcript of the debate and what is the check-worthiness score for each of the sentences. The reporters or the fact checkers, any other regular users, they can go and rank the sentences by highly check-worthy to low check-worthy. And for each of the candidates, we try to model like what is his speaking kind of spectrum. Is the speaker giving more factual claims or boasting opinions or what? And in this side, we have the check-worthy factual claims posted by our Twitter handle. For example, Bernie Sanders mentioned we have the highest rate of childhood poverty, and we are the only country in the world. Okay. So doing that live was a lot of challenge. For example, from the video caption, when the debate is going on, you don't get the speaker information. Right? In the video caption, you don't have the speaker information. So how do I associate this sentence with the actual speaker? That was one challenge that if we want, I can talk about it offline, but that's not my goal here. So, all right. So that was the claim finding or claim spotting part of the overall claim buster project. So we are looking into social media, we are looking into presidential debates, we are looking into congressional records, and finding what are the, or monitoring what are the factual claims that needs to be checked. So what's next? Now we are sending the highly checkworthy factual claims to PolitiFact through email, through Twitter account, and they, if they believe this is important, they can check over it. So we are kind of acting like a filter mechanism. Our goal is to also verify the veracity of the factual claims through open knowledge network, through the database where we already know that these already have been fact-checked and so on. If something hasn't been fact-checked, then we want to query the database and find evidences and provide the confidence or provide the veracity of the factual claims. So before I go to our next project, do you have any question on this one? Yeah.
So it occurs to me that unimportant versus important could be viewed as a continuum. I wonder how your research could have been different if you had structured in first a binary decision, factual claim or not. Is there a factual claim or not? And then if there is a factual claim, have people rank, show them two sentences of factual claim and say which one is more important to check. And then by virtue of that, you get a gradual ranking falls out. And
Yep.
then you could just send things in order of most important first.
Yeah. So if we think about it, this is a classification task, but it can also be considered as a regression problem where you have 0, 1, 2, non-checkered at all, somewhat checkered are important, highly checkered.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So we tried to model as a regression problem as well, but in terms of accuracy, we didn't see much of a change.
Okay.
In terms of model accuracy. Now, in terms of user study, we didn't conduct any user study, which one is more useful for the users. We haven't done any study on that. However, if we look at the panel here, on this panel we have the claim buster score from 0 to 1.
Okay.
So the user can change or slide over the score and say, I want to just highlight the factual claims where the score is above 0.75.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Right. So that's the threshold in your system,
Right.
not from the annotators.
Right.
But so the system was just given,
The
the
result.
not.
Right.
But you nevertheless have a sliding scale
Right.
because you're getting
Right.
scores out that have a certain confidence.
Right. So the user can change that and see
Right.
which one makes, which one passes the threshold.
Right.
Yes.
I'm not super familiar with the model, but I think the presidential debate is an interesting data set because there are a lot of candidates to speak for their personal record. But I'm thinking if Donald Trump says something like, I've never talked to Ukraine before, would that sentence be characterized as an important fact-check-worthy sentence because it sounds like, just from the sentence, it sounds kind of subjective and because I don't know. I'm wondering if this is a...
Can you repeat the sentence, please?
Yeah.
What is the sentence?
I don't know if
I
it's...
never talked to Ukraine. That's
Oh, yeah. Never talked to the president. All right. So apparently it gets a low checkworthy score, but people who may disagree, it needs to be high checkworthy, right? Yeah.
So you had one interesting thing you did was you didn't get random people to annotate, right?
We did in the pilot study when we sent the
But these data are from
Yeah.
like people with knowledge.
Right.
I'm super curious. I'm super curious because it seems like there's so many different factors that go into what makes. If you separate the problems of is this a claim, that seems easier to me, versus is this a check-worthy claim that seems wickedly complicated, and I'm super curious how the annotators thought through their judgments. Like why, fact check-worthy for whom at what time? Like right now, this is super relevant, right? Because we know there's an impeachment inquiry going on right now. This is like super relevant right now. So the 0.24 this is from a model that was trained from data collected,
Right.
right? Like,
1960 to 2012.
yeah, right. So annotations were completed before 2016, right?
Yes.
But I'm just curious, like, did you get any, even if it's just talking to them, like, what did they say? Like, what's checkworthy?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And some question that I got during the training session was, what if a sentence contains both fact and opinion? Right? It's possible to have a longer sentence with multiple facts, or part fact, part opinion. What do I do with that? So we decided, as long as it contains a fact, one fact, no matter how many opinions, if you believe that it needs to be checked, then you label it as a CFS. And we did not provide any kind of guideline in terms of timeliness. So our model haven't captured it.
Yeah, so it's like, I would hypothesize obvious ones like timeliness, checkworthiness for who,
Right.
something about the source.
The checkworthiness for whom actually has been captured. For example,
Oh.
the speaker information when they annotate, that is theirs. So they know whether it is coming from which presidential candidate.
Oh, sorry, I meant like who would consider it checkworthy.
Oh,
So maybe I,
see.
as
Right.
as a foreign person, don't care about policies for social security. But if I'm a citizen and I'm old and I'm about to collect my social security checks, I
Right.
really want to know if that claim is true.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Most of our annotators were students.
Okay.
Yes, that's kind of one uniformity, and some of them were journalists and faculties. But these are interesting questions.
If you collected any data,
Sure. Any other questions before I jump to the next one? Yes.
Can you replace the I with like a proper noun?
Yeah.
Let's see, like
I guess if we
Which
replace
one?
it with just
like just a specific person.
Is that where you at?
All right, yeah, that word. That's it. That's a funny thing.
Almost the same.
it went higher by one. Yeah.
Almost the same. Okay. So let's move on. So this project is on fact checking, but from a different angle. Okay? So we know about PolitiFact, and like PolitiFact, there are other fact checking organizations here as well. For example, factcheck.org and Washington Post. They have a separate fact checking effort, right? And major news media nowadays in US and in European countries, they have different fact checking organizations. I know in Europe they have full fact. In Argentina they have checkerboard. So all these different countries, they are coming up with fact-checking organizations and so on. However, if you look at this nice figure, it shows that most of the fact-checking, or at least 1/3 of the fact-checking organizations, when they start, after a couple of years, they just can't sustain. Okay? So what you're looking at is there are 160 active fact-checking organizations worldwide, and there are 60 fact-checking organizations which started but are now inactive. They could not sustain. Okay? So let me ask you guys, why do you think they can't sustain?
Are these the inactive organizations ones that were important at some point?
Yes.
They could improve the accuracy of the model.
These are human fact checkers, so no model here. Yes.
Unclear who's going to pay for it.
Exactly. That's
Right.
the.
You get 3-year grant and
So you need money to sustain yourself, right? You can get money during the hype kind of time, like election. Okay? People will probably give you money to run your organization. But what if the election is over? How do I sustain now, right? The other problem, yes.
But you could treat it like the census. Like the census ramps up its high rate every 10 years and then shrinks again. You could maybe do the same thing here.
Yeah, that's another way to look at it, right? Another problem is they cannot take money from whichever wants to donate money to them. Okay, they have to be kind of neutral. They have to be non-partisan, right? So that's another problem. So fact-checking is time-consuming and therefore expensive. Time to offer impartial service, so I have to avoid partisan funding source. less scalable and more labor intensive. Funding is often tied to the election cycle or the consensus, as you mentioned, right? So these are the things that they identified when they say that why the fact-checking organizations are not sustaining or they are getting closed. Okay, so I was wondering, how can we come up with a different fact-checking model? Okay, so what's their model is they have a set of employees who are working on fact-checking on a weekly basis, and they have some money incoming, and they're just working like a regular organizations. How can we think from a different angle? So, all right, so what's the sustainable model for fact-checking? I really don't know, but I want to ask questions to myself. Can crowd, the professionals, and automation, they can work together to make a sustainable fact-checking model? And what would the business model look like? Good. So if we want to test this question, whether crowd plus professional plus automation will have a sustainable fact-checking organization, I need an organization that has this model. Or I need to build an organization which has all these three components and can sustain. Unfortunately, I don't have the grant to kind of create such an organization and so on. So I want to look at, is there any organization which has one of, or at least two of them? Luckily, there is one crowd-based fact-checking platform, called it political fact-checking on Reddit. And there, the crowd are asking questions. Can you check this? Okay. And the crowd, they're also providing evidence. This is true, this is false, this is my opinion. And there is a set of professional fact-checkers, or you can say moderators, who guides the overall discussion, who try to understand, who find all these evidences, look over all these evidences, and then come up with the actual score. This is mostly true, this is mostly false, and so on. Okay? But there is no automation, right? So I have three components. How professional automation, I can test these two, but I don't know how to add the automation there. But we'll look, I will show what I did there. Okay. So my questions are, what claims do people want to see fact-check? Okay. So this is different than ClaimBuster. In ClaimBuster, the annotators are saying probably people would like to see this fact-check. But here, the crowd are seeking information. Hey, whether this is true or false. So I can look at that, analyze that, and get a higher level understanding, or better understanding of what people want to see fact-check. What roles the crowd play? Do the crowd do the fact-checking, or they just do some random discussion? And what does the professional play here? And how automation can help scaling this up or making the project overall efficient. So this is kind of a snapshot of the political fact-checking subreddit. So you can see that these are the requests from the crowd. Some of them don't have any veracity at this moment. Some of them has been labeled as unverifiable, okay, false, and some of them are true. Okay? And each of these has a set of comments, and these comments have evidences, opinions, and fact clarifications and other things. Okay. So there are about 10,000 members over there, and there are 5 professionals who work as the moderators. These are the accounts for the 5 professionals. Okay. So here's one example.
When you call them professionals, that just means that that person might actually have a totally different profession, but just as a hobby, or do you know that they are?
They have the reporting or the journalism background.
Okay.
These are like not regular admins.
So like I couldn't be a moderator because like I'm not.
You can, but if you have, you have to talk with them and show that these are my qualifications, and then you can. Yeah.
I'm just wondering about the idea that fact checkers can be nonpartisan at all when you have a political situation where you have certain parties whose relationship with the truth is pretty tenuous, so that anyone who cares much about the truth is necessarily partisan. So anybody who would even want a fact checker is necessarily partisan. I guess with what you're saying about Reddit, well, I suppose I've heard that Reddit tends towards the left a little bit, but it's out on the internet. I'm sure there's people on various sides. But how do you deal with that?
So this is a crowd-based platform, right? So it mostly depends on what kind of crowd are contributing to this effort.
Well, I'm sorry, I guess my question is really like, how do you, who really cares about whether something's fact-checked if they're gonna just believe the same thing they believed before it was fact-checked?
There is one work which tries to kind of understand the impact of fact-checking. Okay? So there is evidence that the politicians, they change their statements after their previous statement has been fact-checked. So definitely the impact is there. Now, what percentage of, or what amount of people actually care about fact-checking, that is an interesting question that I probably don't have the expertise to answer that question. But you are right, if I have confirmation bias, or if I'm living in a bubble, or in those kind of situations whether I really care about the facts or not, or whether if something is going with my belief, or I'll believe that without checking. So those issues are actually definitely there.
So on this subreddit, what's the rate for them coming to some sort of consensus or answer? Because you seem to have some that are a month old that don't seem to have a tag about whether or not they're truthful or not.
Yeah, I'll come to those numbers. So here's one example of the comments that we go. Yeah. So the site has been active for 5 years. Till 2012, and the work or the data here is collected on 2017, but still going on. About 500 posts, 2,000 comments and sub-comments and so on. But you see that the activity, number of posts, when they kind of started was pretty high, but at the later stages it is not as much as it was before, probably 30 on this side, and it will be even lower than that and so on. So, and the tags that they provide is, by the way, to short answer, it takes about 7 days for them to check. So the labels that they provide is confirm, mostly true, have true, and if something is not verifiable, they say not verifiable or partisan bias and so on. And in terms of number of fact checks, you see that most of their fact checks have been labeled as false, and mostly false is there, and partisan bias and so on. Right. So we coded each of the fact check requests by the topic, like what are the things that the people want to fact check. Is it about immigration? Is it about foreign policy? Is it about tax or so on? So we had about 12 topics to annotate the fact check request. And the type of the post, whether this is a fact check request or not, whether this is seeking some information or giving some opinion or in the thread. The source of the fact is the fact coming from user-generated content like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whether it's coming from a news media or some alternative media. What is the thing that the request is trying to check? Is it trying to check the policy or an organization or a person, for example, Barack Obama? And nature of the fact, is it a statistical or a quotation or image, video, and so on? And for the comments, the coding scheme was what is the action that the user is doing here? Is the user providing an argument? And in the argument, you also consider, is this argument with evidence or without an evidence? Is the user trying to check the verifiability or just posting irrelevant comments? Okay. And also see, when they provide evidence, this evidence is coming from a news media, alternative media, Wikipedia, or other government organizations and so on. So what are the things that they believe as the evidence? So when you look at the topics that they want to see fact check, at the top we have economy, election, security, health. So these four, they cover 70% of all the fact check requests. So these are the topics that they want to see fact check. And there are some topics which you see the percentage of fact check. What I mean by that is you have 130 posts about economy. 62 of them has been fact checked within this subreddit, and 68 of them hasn't been fact-checked, which means the fact-checkability, if I say the word, is about 47% for the topic common. Okay? And for some topics, the percentage is high, which means these topics I can probably easily check, or the crowd can easily check. For example, 47% here, for the health 47%, foreign affairs 47%. There are some facts for which the score is low. For instance, equality, immigration, the score is 30-21, so which indicates that there are some topics which can be easily checked, some topics which cannot be easily checked by the crowd. Why? We haven't got into that details. I don't know whether this is because of the lack of resources or what. Most fact-check requests are for the alternative media and the user-generated content. For example, I saw this in Twitter, I saw this in Facebook, I saw this in Instagram and so on. And they are about person and policy, not so much about an organization. Okay. So here we have the distribution of the source categories, like what is the source of the fact, of the request. Most of them coming from the alternative media and UGC, on user-generated content platforms. Okay. So the next question is, what role does the crowd play in fact-checking? Do they just talk or do some meaningful activities? Okay. So we see that in 40% of the cases, they just post three different things. That is expected in any crowdsourced environment. People will not follow the rules. But about 70% of the case, they provide their argument. Okay. Now we can question whether the argument is mostly opinion or evidence or not. I'll come to that later. And in some cases, they seek clarifications. For example, hey, this is, you post this request, do you want to check this or do you mean that? So these kinds of clarification questions. And the moderators, they assign the flair, unverifiable, mostly true, mostly false, and so on. And some questions about the verifiability of the fact. For example, you post a request and the user can say this is not verified. Okay. In the argument, we saw that there were 1,000 arguments which have evidence, and there were 860 which just opinion and judgment. I don't think, or I believe, and so on, but they don't contain any evidence. So, we look at the relationship between evidence and the flair of the request. For example, if this is true, does it mean that people provided more factual evidence on them? If it is unverifiable, does it mean that people did not provide much of an evidence? Okay. So what I found that for unverifiable, which is not verifiable, the average number of factual evidence is only 2.38. Okay. But it has more opinion, more judgment. If it is kind of clear, mostly true, then you see there is less opinion, less judgment, but more factual evidence. You also see that for half-true, confirmed, false, that the factual evidence is more. And when we go from please verify unverifiable, then there is not much evidence. We also looked at where do they get their evidences. Okay. So they get their evidence from Wikipedia. We get about 300 citations from Wikipedia. They get their evidence from PolitiFact. If it has already been checked, they provide that references. And also from other Reddits. Washington Post, New York Times, YouTube, White House, FactCheck.org. So you see that the fact-checking organizations, they are really doing a good job. People who have questions and people who know that these have been checked, they have they are working together there. And an average fact-checking time is about 7 days. When they post it and when the flair is assigned. So what does the professionals or the moderators are doing there? So the moderators provide evidence, just like a regular crowd. They evaluate the evidence presented by the crowd. They summarize, argument, and post their own summary. They update the rating. If future or later some more evidence come, then I need to change the flair, so that they do that. They also ask for clarifications and definitely regulate the group, like, hey, don't go on fighting, just post comments on the topic and so on. And they sometimes announce some new events. Okay. So these are the things that I found from analyzing the data. Remember, I had three components: crowd, professionals, and automation. There is no automation in the, at least I didn't find any kind of automation in the subreddit. But I was thinking how automation can help in making the process more efficient. So one option is what if I apply ClaimBuster and ran the fact check request by the checkworthiness and present it to the moderators. Okay, you have this 100 fact check requests, and these are their checkworthiness score. Maybe you get a better idea which one needs to be fact checked and which one is more checkworthy than not. Argument classification can be applied over the comments and see which ones are opinion, which one have evidence, which one don't have an evidence. We can also apply stance detection. Given this evidence, given this topic, what is the stance of the evidence towards this topic? So we can also apply that. We can rank the comments. We can solicit arguments from other users based on expertise. Yes?
Sorry, there's a clarification. How did you get the ground truth for based on evidence versus evidence lacking?
Based on evidence, we added the data.
Oh, your CS and journalist interns or students.
Yeah. So those annotation was done by the journalist students.
Oh, okay, the journalism students and inter-attitude agreement on that.
I have to look at the paper.
Okay, so just wondering what the ceiling is like. That's 82. What would the highest possible frequency?
Average accuracy, I think there was a model's accuracy of 80%. There was a model's accuracy. That seems too high. That seems too high. I think because of because the data was coming from a not so diverse discussion. That could be one of the reasons. So that's kind of our second project. Do you have any questions before I go to the third one? Yes.
This sort of picks up on the sixth question, which is, it seems like a lot of this is grounded in some assumptions about, some sort of philosophical assumptions about essentially what is ground truth, how do we assess it, who's qualified to assess it, and who will believe out of the general public certain types of assessments and by certain types of assessors. Right. So it seems like with different organizations you might have different sort of philosophical stances to that. And I'm wondering, how does that affect, like in terms of looking at how automation can help scale up, if ClaimBuster and FactCheck have somewhat different ways, philosophical bases, does that affect your ability to integrate those two data sources?
Definitely.
And how does that affect,
So one way to kind of tackle that is not take the verdict from the machine directly. You can have a kind of a human in between, right? So the model is giving the decision that this is checkworthy, and the human can again work as a filter to decide on the models.
But I think the more fundamental question is, what about the human? The human has, like you're saying, maybe biases, but even more fundamentally may have just different perceptions of different, it just seems like in many kinds of machine learning type environments, we can take the human as more or less ground truth, right? In this particular case, I think what we're sort of seeing is that are the humans really, can they provide any single ground truth, or do we have to think about them as also being having some sort of distribution?
I mean, like a historian and a mathematician may have different ideas of what constitutes a proof.
Could I just throw in, so I sat next to somebody on the plane the other day who was reading something about the Clintons and their trail of money and blood, and tried to talk to him, and
How'd that go?
well, I almost got kicked off the flight.
You
but-
You
survived.
almost got kicked off the flight?
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, he, Washington Post, New York Times, ABC, NBC, CBS are all completely non-credible sources as far as he's concerned. Probably Fox as well at this point. So, and I think there are a lot of people in this country for whom those are all not credible sources. So, and then the people for whom they are credible sources, you know, if you check via those sources, are you going to be saying anything that's not just preaching to the choir? I mean, who? So my question again is like, who does fact checking really matter for?
That's a really hard question for me.
That's a deep question. Deep question.
Yeah.
I can throw something in the mix, right? So there's like the backfire effect, you've heard of it, right? Like, it turns out the backfire effect isn't quite the law of the land. So the backfire effect is like, if you debunk a claim from someone else, they supposedly reinforce their initial belief, but it turns out that's not really always the case. So there's hope for some people to be presented with a fact check that helps calibrate their beliefs.
There's another way to look at it. So let's say no people care about fact checking. Let's say people don't care about fact checking. Then should you not fact check? Should you not make the politicians liable for what they say?
I'm not saying that people don't care about fact checking, but they usually care more about the fact checking that confirms their
Own
pre-existing
Right,
bias.
right.
Yeah. And so even though the fact checking feels important, you know, if we didn't have such a divided country right now, it would make a big difference. So, you know, when I'm willing to care that Obama lied about something or Bill Clinton lied about something, yeah, I want to see the fact check. But like, what does it matter that you're telling me that Trump lied? I think everything he says is a lie.
I think there's some portions, the base of whatever side, that are not going to be caring, but I think there's still a big portion of people in the middle that make up their mind from these things.
You look at how quickly recently the sort of opinion polls on impeachment have moved, right? Clearly that shows there's at least some people who are going to be convinced by things. It's not just, you know, 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever. So the fact that some new fact will change some people's opinions, even if it's not a large percentage of people.
I think it is a large percent. I think the base is not huge. They're very visible and rabid,
Great.
but
Yes.
So I think this is a less deep question. So under scaling up approach, you tried using other sources of checkworthiness, which are automated and which themselves need a large corpus that needs to be annotated. So scaling that automation itself is a problem. How can that scale up? Say something like Reddit. The second part is, how is this going to be a better representation of checkworthiness for that community as opposed to using, say, the upward system in that community?
So the first question is, if we need to annotate the data to have a model.
Yeah, for example, you live checked Donald Trump talk to the Ukrainian president. What was the checkworthiness score? What the source, did it include data from this month?
No. So the model hasn't been trained from the data on this month.
Yes.
So your question is, how do I train the model with all this new data? Is
Yes.
that correct? One way to tackle that is a way we can do, let's say, iterative machine learning. We provide the machine's judgment to the reporters, the fact checkers, and the fact checkers can provide feedback. Hey, the machine said this, but I don't think this is CFS, I think this should be UFS. So the feedback can be fed to the model, and the model can improve itself. So that's kind of one way we can tackle that. But the other question that you asked is whether a machine learning model can help this to scale up. I want to believe that at least it can take some burden of looking at all these fact check requests for the moderators to some extent. And also, if you look at the comments, lots of comments are posted. If there is some filter that can tell me these comments are mostly opinion, these comments are irrelevant, and these are the comments which you really should focus on, that it can help the moderators or scale up their effort.
My question is more like, is it, again, so this is a 10,000 member community, so there's this way in which they try to rank posts that people should read for the consumer and not maybe the moderator. So there's that upvoting and downvoting system of Reddit, right? So
right.
If this model here is 72% accurate in associating a checkworthiness score, is that necessarily better than, say, a bunch of people within that community upvoting and downvoting?
Oh, I see. That's a very valid point. Yeah, we haven't tested that. But we can try to see whether, in addition to the up and downvote score, the claim bus will help or not. We can definitely test it. That's a very good point.
Since we just have 3 minutes, we're just going to take one final question, and then we can...
Oh, just a comment. There actually has been some work on ranking and clarification questions on Stack Overflow. I wonder if that might be relevant to looking for clarification.
Right.
And that pseudo route and how that may refer in computer science.
I know Nicholas also had a comment, work on a comment and finding the relevant comments. So there has been some work on filtering the comments based on different criteria. That can help the community or make it more scalable or efficient.
Okay, let's just wrap up the session.
Yeah.
Thanks.